So good afternoon to everyone, or good day, based on where you're coming from. So welcome to the webinar Social Advertising Trends in APAC 2022. I'm Shannon. I will be your host for today. So we saw in the past 2 years in the pandemic how consumers' dependence on social media grew even further, transforming the space to now serve different purposes, not just to the consumer, but also to the brand. So what has changed in social advertising? How can we adapt to these changes and thrive in the competition? So this might be some of your key inquiries today, and this is why we've gathered here today to answer these questions for you, together with the marketing heads of some of the top brands in the region. But before we officially start, let me just remind you of a few basic house rules for us today. So all of you are muted, all of the participants are muted, but we do encourage you to please send out any questions that you have during the presentation in the Q&A chat below. So if you think of a question or an inquiry during the presentation, just feel free to send that out in the Q&A chat below, and we're going to attend to them later at the dedicated Q&A portion. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce you to our first presenter for today. He is Stuart Hunter, the Director for Customer Success of Smartly.io for APAC, and he will be sharing with us the key trends in social advertising today. So
thanks,
welcome,
Shina.
Stuart.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hello, welcome everybody. So glad to have you join us today for this presentation and panel moderation. So I'm thrilled to share this virtual space with yourselves for the next kind of hour. I'll go through a short presentation to start, to kick things off, to give some context, and then we'll get into the main event today, which will be the moderation panel. So I'm just going to share my screen now. First of all, I'd just like to say that this survey that I'm going to take you through is Smartly's flagship survey. We do this on an annual basis globally. We speak to CMOs across the globe, across Asia Pacific, North America, and Europe and the Middle East. And we really ask them about what's going on within social media advertising and the trends and the challenges that they're facing with their business. So I'm going to take you through the key findings of this report. Hopefully you'll find some stimulating insights, which will set up context for the moderation panel to follow. So just to give some context about Smartly, because I assume that not everybody is a Smartly customer currently. There will be some customers on the call, but just to give you some background about who we are as a business. So we're a SaaS platform, but we also have a number of world-leading services that support our customers who use our SaaS platform. We combine creativity, media, and automation in a single place to enable people to effectively scale social advertising, unleash the full power of creativity within social advertising, and improve their performance. So performance marketeers love our platform as well as brand marketeers. We operate across the social advertising channels, so Meta's channels, Facebook and Instagram. We've got our offering now launching on TikTok. We have Twitter, YouTube. We run across the social advertising ecosystem, and with our recent acquisition of Adlib.io at the start of the year, we also operate now and help people with creative problems in the Google ecosystem as well. So the report I'm going to take you through, it's one where we speak to CMOs from the top brands across the globe. And within Asia Pacific, we're talking to CMOs and senior leadership within brands. We're asking them questions about what they feel will be happening in the year ahead. This survey happens in Q4 each year. And the people who are really responding and we're asking the questions in the survey are brands who are spending over $1 million annually, US dollars annually on social media advertising. So they're doing this at a certain volume of scale. They're sort of the key brands within the region. So spoiler alert, one of the key things that we're seeing obviously is that social advertising is growing in its importance. It's more important than ever to brands. So over 36% of the brands that we surveyed actually said that they will be spending more on social media advertising in 2022 than they did in the previous year. So if I just dive now into some of the key trends from our survey, I think one of the absolute most important things is that brands are really looking to focus more of their marketing budget within social advertising. Over 84% of the brands that we surveyed in Asia Pacific said that they were spending over 50% of their advertising budget within social media advertising. That's actually the highest percentage globally, way higher than North America and Europe. So really, truly, Asia Pacific across the region, we're a social media first market. And then within that, virtually everybody is advertising on Facebook. Instagram is then the next most prominent channel, most popular channel. And then way over half of CMOs who responded to the survey said that they were investing on Twitter and YouTube. And then at the point of time which we asked the questions of these surveys, which was Q4 last year, 33% of CMOs said they were investing advertising dollars on Twitter. What was really, for me, really interesting is when we actually asked the question about how they were looking to increase or decrease their advertising investment during this year. So when we spoke to people, virtually everybody was saying that they were looking to focus and invest more within Meta in this region. So nearly everybody was saying that they were going to be increasing their budgets within Facebook. It's going to be a really competitive environment, even more so. And then Instagram, over 70% of CMOs were saying they were going to be increasing their investment there. YouTube and Twitter, again, a significant number of CMOs were saying they were increasing their investment on these two channels during this year. What for me is really interesting is that only 7% of CMOs were saying currently in Q4 that they were looking to increase the investment that we're making on TikTok. This for me was quite surprising when I was looking at these results in this context of Q1. And I suggest that this shows really the speed of change that we're experiencing within digital advertising and social advertising currently. If I ask this question again to the same CEOs or say the same CMOs this quarter, I don't think I'd get exactly that response. I think it'd be a lot higher. And I'm sure the panel will be able to talk to this maybe after the presentation. And you yourselves listening to this, sort of question where you are on kind of how you are looking at increased investment across the channels this year. One key takeout is that more people are looking to diversify their social media advertising investments for the year ahead. So that's the context of where we are. And then we actually asked the CMOs to look at giving us an insight into kind of the challenges, the key challenges that they were facing for this year. And we looked to give them a chance to look at internal challenges and how they were trying to address them, and then external challenges. So the biggest internal challenges that people were really talking to us about and responding to was this lack of talent. So even though the industry is getting more complicated and becoming more important, there's definitely continues to be a lack of talent as the biggest pain point and biggest challenge that people are facing internally. Sufficient design resource specifically, as this channel continues to get more complex. This is also a really key challenge with over 41% of people listing that. And then the ability now to be able to effectively run multiple social channels successfully was again called out as a major challenge, 30%. And a significant people were looking to understand how they could integrate social advertising to the overall channel mix. So externally, the biggest challenges, rising costs of social advertising and the increased competition. As more and more people are spending on Meta and Instagram, it's no surprise that people are calling out this is one of the biggest external challenges they're facing, coupled with this shift in consumer behavior. So now people see a challenge of how to follow their consumers effectively. They're going across multiple channels, more and more channels. How can they actually match the shift of consumer behavior? And then the last one I'd call out here is really measurement and attribution. I know the panel have really got some clear thoughts around this, but for everyone on the call, I assume that measurement and attribution is an increased challenge now than it was maybe a couple of years ago. And CMOs really reflected that when we spoke to them just recently. Then to sort of wrap this up, we asked people to kind of give us areas that they're really considering to focus on within 2022. And we gave them a long list of areas to focus on. And really what we got was a clear indication that expanding on the in-house marketing team to manage better social media advertising was a clear priority. And I believe Jappy will be able to talk more to this shortly. And then the next highest area for consideration was really around how will they spend more on social media in 2022. I started off the overview talking about 36% year-on-year increase in social media advertising. How are we all going to be doing that as effectively as we can? The other consideration is creative automation, making sure that people will be able to use that more effectively in the future. And then a number of people are looking at being able to outsource social media advertising to be able to rise to the challenge. And finally, investing in advertising tools and technology specifically designed to be able to get them a better result. So to wrap up now, how can brands plan for 2022? I think this will give some context to now the panel that we'll just start. But very simply, it is going to be a year of going truly multi-platform. Your customers, our customers are already there. They're already across these multiple social media platforms. Now the brands and the CMOs are really looking to make sure that they are truly following their consumers and their potential consumers across multiple platforms. The focus is absolutely on talent, retaining talent, growing talent. And this is going to be a real challenge for everybody, especially within the context of coming out of the pandemic. Then potentially a solution, some of the CMOs that we surveyed definitely gave this as a clear solution, is actually automation. So within this year, how are people going to use automation to blend a range of processes so they can achieve creativity at scale and solve this talent challenge, not necessarily by removing the need for their people, quite the contrary, unleashing the creativity of their people, unleashing their ability of the people to actually add additional value, additional creativity for the process of social media advertising. So I'd like to thank you for listening to that. Hopefully that was some insightful commentary and gives some really good context for the panel ahead.
Yes, thank you so much, Stuart, for that very insightful presentation. Really interesting to know about the rise of multi-platform advertising and also for sharing with us the current strategies of brands for 2022. So thank you so much, Stuart. I'm sure that our audience has learned a big deal about the topic, and we do have some questions that are already in. So, all right. So there is a good question here, Stuart, that you might want to answer. So some industries such as e-commerce and retail are very competitive when it comes to social advertising. So how can advertisers stay ahead of the competition on paid social?
Great question. Really good question. So I think you've got to, first of all, understand your overall objectives and goals and stay true to that. You've got to understand how you have uniqueness within your proposition. And I'd say now more than ever, you've got to really understand that and then produce creative to be able to effectively connect with your consumers within social advertising. So I think it's really creative first. It's being able to do that at scale and to be able to get ahead. I think you've got to use one of our values that we have at Smartly, maximize learning. You've really got to try and innovate, stay ahead of the changes, and embrace some of the real biggest challenges that are going to be facing us all in 2022. And I'm happy to discuss that with the panel shortly.
So there's also another question here. What's a good starting point for brands with complex team structures and processes to slowly automate their workflow? So this is more on the automation process.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, if you're looking to automate, you're looking to do things at scale, and you're looking to make sure that you can personalize. So first of all, knowing your consumers and how you want to personalize and how you want to segment them is key. When you have that structure, I think then it's looking to use experts in the industry and tools within the industry that specialize in automation. For one, that's a given. But when you're starting, I think it's not making it too complicated, but having some clear goals around how you can start to automate. And the key of automation should be that you should be able to get a more effective result for less time and effort. And so as you're starting this process, I think you should definitely have those two objectives in mind, and you should be looking to measure them. So it's not just whether you can get a better result, but it's also, can you tangibly show that this automation is actually saving time and effort so that you can free yourself up to be able to do other things. So I think measure success is a real simple way. The other thing I'd say is that certain businesses will be able to automate in different ways to others. So I think it's really just making sure that you understand what your goals are and how you think you can automate for your own business. So if you're an e-commerce retailer, it might be very like feed-based and product-based. If you're not, and you're looking more to sort of sell sort of a smaller range of products, it may well be understanding your personas and your customer base and how you can really segment and automate messages and creativity to those specific consumers rather than the specific products.
Yes, it's just really about finalizing and making clear goals at the beginning.
Yeah.
So there's also a question here about B2B companies. Is it advisable for B2B companies to invest in social media despite the target market are companies?
Yeah, absolutely. Social media is for every type of business. So for B2B companies rather than B2C, completely. It might be that you want to invest in different platforms. It really will be following your consumer. So, if you're a B2B if you're a B2B company, it may well be that LinkedIn is a more prominent part of your overall marketing mix than if you're a B2C. But I'd say it's really understanding where your customer are and when's the right time and right format to communicate to them.
Yes, everybody is pretty much in social media. Yeah, so we also have, I think we have time for a few more questions. Yeah, so this is actually something that you've touched on your presentation. So are there any emerging platforms that you think are underutilized by marketers and brands? Because you did mention that surprisingly TikTok is on the low side.
Yeah, I think absolutely. You can talk exclusively about TikTok here, but that would be wrong. There are other platforms that will be underutilized, but the big one that obviously everyone is talking about is TikTok. And it's just clear that consumers have moved to TikTok far quicker than advertising dollars. It's the usual story. It always happens every single time there's a major shift in consumer behavior. Consumers there first before brands. And to be fair, brands need to have the tools and technology and the platform and the experience to be able to unlock that opportunity. So I think TikTok is definitely an underutilized platform that is it's the biggest arbitrage opportunity of 2022. The money's not there yet. The users are. People who can unlock this opportunity will get in there and spend effectively.
So there is a question here about traditional advertisements. So can we consider the traditional advertisements such as TV, print, and radio ads to be out of the ball game already?
No, I don't think so. I think, obviously, like there's a large percentage of the budget now being spent on social advertising. But we live in the real world as well as the virtual world, and I think you've got to use both, especially following your own brand and your own consumer, and just make sure that you're measuring success effectively for your brand in all ways. I think Mei Ling may touch on this for her business, but yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yes. Thank you so much, Stuart. Actually, we're already receiving questions for the panelists even before we start the panel discussion. Yeah, so thank you so much, Stuart. I think we can move on to the next discussion. So thank you so much for your presentation again, Stuart. But Stuart is not going to leave us just yet because he's also going to moderate the next part of the discussion. So thank you so much, Stuart, and the floor is yours again.
Okay, great. Thank you once again. I mean, to be honest with you, this is the main event. My presentation was just the warm-up act, so I'm really happy to get the opportunity to share the virtual stage with a number of the leading brands and the leading marketeers from the region. So yeah, we're going to, as I've said, we're going to talk about some of the opportunities and challenges in social advertising today. So let me introduce you to each one of them. So I'm going to start with ladies first. So Mei Ling Chan, Hi, Mei Ling.
Hi, good morning.
Hi. So Mei Ling is the Chief Marketing Officer of KFC Malaysia. Welcome. We've got David Lim. Hi, David.
Hi, Stuart. Hello.
Hey. And David's the Vice President of Marketing at HappyFresh. And then finally, last but by no means least, we have Jappy Posadas. Hi, Jappy.
Morning. Hello.
Morning. And Jappy is leading youth studio for Unilever Indonesia. So guys, thank you very much for your time. This is going to be a really good session. I'm just going to dive straight into it. Appreciate your time. And I'm going to kick off with David. First of all, I'm loving the opportunity to actually get a chance to chat to you, David, because obviously HappyFresh, with the backdrop of the pandemic, has gone through this like amazing 2-year period. It's probably been quite exciting and stressful at the same time. So obviously the grocery delivery space is this really interesting hot space right now. And there's a lot of challenges at the same time going on within digital marketing and social media advertising. So when you're sort of looking at your most recent marketing efforts, what are some of the pain points that HappyFresh and within the social media advertising process, what are some of the pain points that you've experienced, and kind of what have they had in terms of an impact on your marketing objectives?
First of all, I think, Stuart, I think it's a very good observation. I think I've aged about 15 years in the 24 months. Working in online groceries has been quite a journey. Pandemic helped us a lot, but I think a lot of things have also changed in the paid advertising or paid social advertising landscape. I think some of the problems or pain points that we've faced right over the past, I would say 24 to 36 months, really I can group it into like 4 points, right? First of all, is the increased reluctance to enjoy a very good piece of advertising. This is regardless of the format or the channel. Basically, online audience are just becoming more and more demanding, right? 5 seconds is really too long for them to wait before they can skip something that they're not interested in, right? We also, as marketers, I think we know less and less about our target audience, right? Especially the iOS users, right? Apple has actually launched a lot of privacy policies that has affected marketers or digital marketers as a whole. This also affected the accuracy of measurements. There are a lot of things that we cannot see or cannot know now. All of this actually created 2 results or 2 impacts. One is rising CAC and cost per order for an e-commerce like ourselves. This means less efficiency on marketing spend. Then I also saw a trend, especially for e-commerce and also brands like KFC, Mei Ling will know about this, returning to the good old days of the madman advertising, right? So where storytelling and brand or product positioning become one of the outcome. It comes back again, right? Where data take a side step and then storytelling becomes the main key part of marketing. But we all know as senior marketers, this step costs a lot more money. So it all becomes a vicious cycle over the past 24 months where the social media advertising landscape has changed a lot.
Wow, yeah, there's a lot of, you paint a really clear, challenging picture. I can see where you may have aged slightly there over the past few years. Yeah, I'll be interested to come back to this because I don't think it is all doom and gloom, because I know that we do have strategies to address this, but it's really clear that there are a number of those pain points. I mean, maybe if I move on to Mei Ling, I mean, you're obviously operating in the same kind of environment, but your situation with your brand is that it's like a truly iconic global brand. KFC is so well known around the world. How within these challenges, one of them, I suppose, is for you is how do you ensure that you're able to keep the context of KFC relevant for Malaysia and advertising relevant for your market? I'm assuming there are lots of kind of ways that you would do that, like creatives, plug-in of local offers, etc. But could you just give some flavor within this sort of challenging time, how you're making sure that KFC is localized and relevant?
Thanks, Stuart, for the question. A good morning to everyone on the call, or good afternoon, wherever you are. So it is true, KFC is a global brand. I think we are present with almost every country in the world. So I like to call it, this is me, a global brand. What that means is KFC as an organization, we have our global assets and our trademark. So when I say global assets and trademarks, I think everybody is very well versed with our buckets. For example, our distinctive buckets. Yep, our Colonel Sanders, who is literally the founder of KFC, and also our 3 red stripes. But what does it mean for us locally? For us, we are given the flexibility to ensure that we remain relevant to the customer. So if you look at all the local markets, a lot of the marketeers are given a hand to ensure we keep true to our distinctive trademark assets that we know affectionately around the world as KFC, our bucket, and Colonel Sanders. But then we can actually localize it to what is relevant for the social context, whether it's a vernacular or to the insights that we have locally. So like, for example, so what you talk about TikTok, like how most marketers move to TikTok. Admittedly, as a marketer, I struggle to do paid advertising TikTok. So what we do is we actually try to transact, and I think in different countries, you have a different For You page, and then you try to transact what's relevant for the country. So how do brands then remain relevant, global brands like us, we try to remain relevant with local context so that our customers actually still keep us in sight and they don't forget us over time. So it's very important, we feel, even though we have global guidelines, we're very strict about certain trademarks. Yesterday, there was just a news announced that Pizza Hut and KFC are now applying trademarks in the NFT space. So that's how relevant we want to be. But I think in the local context, we're still given the leeway to actually be more culturally relevant. I think that's very important. If not, we may just lose sight of our local customers, and that's where we want to grow our brand love and business from. Yeah, so right. that will be how a global brand will operate, I would say. Yeah,
great. It's interesting that you're using that sort of your consumers and just consumers in general and how they interact on a platform like TikTok to be able to actually feed back to see how you can be relevant to them by responding to the overall trend that people are, I assume, experiencing in Malaysia or wherever in Malaysia that you're operating in.
Yeah, so I mean, for the Malaysians on the call, you've seen some customer complaints that happens on TikTok, and we recognize that as a real customer complaint, and we do take action immediately. We reach out to them, we address it, and we make sure that we have an action plan to address their concern. So that's how big the channel is. And we, as a marketer, I think we can't deny it. We just need to understand how to work with it. For me, honestly, I view TikTok every night I go to sleep because I just need to understand its algorithm. How does it work, and how does a brand marketer be relevant in a channel like that? Yeah.
Yeah. I'll see if I can follow you after this call. Jaffy, it's great. Obviously, Unilever. I mean, no introduction there, right? Everybody knows the collection of world famous brands that you've got under your remit, and obviously with yourself being the lead for U Studio, so it's an in-house creative agency. So you've got a ton of experience across a wide range of brands. I mean, I'm interested to hear like where you feel that brands are failing in social media advertising strategies. I assume that some are and some are winning. So could you give a flavor for kind of where you find how you find that people might fail or might do something that's not so successful?
Yeah, so I think it's a big struggle for the industry, I'd say, just not just for Unilever, because the social media space is very cluttered, very saturated, especially if you're, say, in Indonesia. If you're on Instagram, all brands want to talk to you in every swipe that you do. So say, for example, I'm Filipino, and I think it's still relevant now that a lot of people are on Facebook, and that's a very saturated platform for Filipinos, for example, right? So then how there is probably just one point I'd like to mention here about where brands fail. It's essentially on understanding their consumers. I think that's the most important part. So like what Mei-Ling said, right? So there are the insights that's very important for us to know who are our target audiences, but also looking deeper into the insights, right? So all of us, so the marketers here, we probably have a research agency or creative agencies that give us insights, but we as marketers really need to dig deep. Like, is this actually, is this actually true? Can we dig deeper? Can we validate this? Until you reach an aha moment. So an aha moment is like, oh, I didn't know that. Then you have a better understanding of your consumers, right? And when you have your aha moment, then you will know what motivates them and what will break their barriers for them to purchase our product. Right? Because at the end of the day, we want them to purchase our products, right?
Yeah.
Another point is communicating brand purpose, because Unilever is home of a lot of very purposeful brands. So say, for example, Lifebuoy, we help kids to fall less sick often, so through proper hygiene, right? So we really need to know as brands, what do we stand for and what can we help the consumers with? And then they would, and we really need to consistently mention this in our communication, right? And lastly is, like I mentioned a while ago, it's a very saturated place to be on, say, Instagram, and even more so now, TikTok is getting more and more saturated, right? So how do you then create unmissable advertising that would really make the people stop in their tracks and engage with you, right? So that's very important, that all of these, your purpose, your unmissable advertising still connects back to that insight that you know very well about your consumers, so that they will engage with you. So that's, of course, as a business, engagement is just one thing. We also want to drive performance for our business, right? So how do we connect the engagement to online sales, offline sales? So that's a different question, perhaps.
Yeah.
Different webinar.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, those aha moments you're talking about, I'd love to be in a room when you does it normally happen that you're together when those happen, or kind of moments of reflection that just comes to you? How would you characterize how you get to that aha moment?
Yeah, so I mean, UStudio is an in-house agency, right? So it's in partnership with Oliver. It's a global agency. Essentially, what we do is, as much as we can, of course, due to the pandemic, it may not be possible. But now that the country and the world is opening up, we really encourage collaboration with the brands and the agency team. So literally behind me, I won't show you now, but there's a pantry where the brand teams and the UStudio team can collaborate to talk about, hey, these are the insights that we gathered. And then, the brand teams and the team, the UStudio team can really, communicate with one another. Like, do we really think this is an insight, or is this on the surface? Can we dig deeper there? So it's really, at the end of the day, a collaborative effort. We don't want to have any siloed teams thinking this is the insight and the brand teams have a different idea. What we really need to do, and this is essentially the advantage of having an in-house teams, because you're literally in a room together, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's great. I'm imagining that being that fly on the wall in the pantry now. It's great. And David, I mean, I'm sure there's lots and lots of collaboration going on at HappyFresh, and especially because you outlined so many pain points earlier on. How have you gone about trying to solve for those pain points, like the tools, or how are you kind of going about addressing the process? Has automation helped fill any of those gaps? Give us some light at the end of the tunnel.
If you go to any chefs, they will tell you that never reveal all of their secrets, right? So,
Okay.
But okay, I'll share a few points, right, about how we look at our problems, our pain points, and how we attempt to kind of solve them along the way. I think we went back to the basic, right, of the success metric you should be looking at whenever you run a paid social media campaign or a big brand campaign. What is that success metric that you're looking at? And then how does creative effectiveness comes in as a form of measurement, right? We need to crack the top of the funnel, right when the awareness was already created, before even going into mid funnel where consideration, intent, and purchase comes into mind. The second one that we really focuses a lot on is data, real-time data, and the ability to put our creatives through A/B tests at scale. Very important aspects of a tool that we look out for. And another thing that I think a lot of senior leaders don't focuses a lot on is really people or the user of the tool. Yeah. For me personally, I'm being brought up in a society where if you're going to buy something and you're not going to use it, you're going to let it become a dust collector. That's what we call it. Then don't buy it, right? Or don't pay for it. So if we are going to make a decision as a team or as a company to engage with a tool for say 6 to 12 months, the users have to be the one that decides the most of whether this makes sense or not. Which is what I'm looking at, right? For let's say a social automation tool would be the designers, for example. They're very closely and passionately linked to the Adobe suite, the Photoshops of the world, right? And how do you draw them away from that such that you give them a tool where they can automate whatever assets or creative assets that they can still produce at scale that is extremely similar to the Adobe suite? That will then make a big change in terms of operation of the advertising team. So these are the few things. And I think most importantly is you will never know what tool suits you until you try it. So I would say go ahead, be brave to go on, say, 2 to 3 months trial, test it out, get the users to really use it, and then have a very collective evaluation period to find out whether is it something that will work.
I think that's some really sound advice. I really like the fact that you're thinking through actually how you can use these solutions, because these solutions may be theoretically good, but you need to really kind of engage and get people to really kind of pull together in the same direction. I think that's sound advice across business in general, but I know that these challenges that everyone's facing within social advertising really need to get people to adopt new processes and new tools. So that's great. And David, you touched on like the top of the funnel and looking at trying to understand how you can identify performance at the top of the funnel as it goes down the funnel. I mean, mailing, if I can come to you about kind of, I suppose that branding at the top and performance down the bottom, kind of like, there's this usual dilemma that marketeers have, being torn between kind of branding and performance campaigns. In your case for KFC Malaysia, what do you prioritize first, branding or performance? Is that even the right question now to be asking? How do you prioritize one over the other, or do you just simply not?
Yeah, so I think that can kind of keep most marketers up awake at night. So how do you prioritize your funding, your A&P funding? I think to what David had said, most of us operate with a top of the funnel and bottom kind of funnel methodology. For a business like ours, to be honest, we're not a 100% e-commerce company. If you're a 100% e-commerce company, I would imagine you will focus a lot on the bottom of the funnel and drive the conversions, drive the cost per lead, drive the acquisition. For a brand like ours, we are still pretty much a traditional kind of operator setup because we rely a lot on dining. And we have a very large footprint around the country when it comes to our restaurants. How we decided is we depend on the campaign objectives because we run multiple layers on our calendar. So the top of the funnel, really, we just want to build the impressions, we want to build a high reach where the traditional marketing comes in. Are we daring and bold enough to say, no, we will stop all traditional advertising? I think not today, but not really yet, because we need to talk to every fabric of the segment that we have across. We're such a mass brand. However, with that being said, I think with the pandemic and contributing also maybe to David's aging is COVID. Because of COVID, all the traditional brands had to pivot to e-commerce very quickly. If not, we will stand a chance to lose out. So for the past 2 years, what we have been on is how do we work with aggregators, for example, and how do we look at bottom of the funnel conversions for our own e-commerce site? How do we get customers to come back and recur and purchase from our e-commerce And Malaysia, I think we had the longest number of lockdown days. I think we had a total of 118 days last year. We just open, close, open, close, open, close. So we had to shift as a traditional restaurant operator and make sure that we also build the technology, the availability, and also the architecture that when it comes to delivery. And with that, our objective really shifted to more conversion at the back of it. So I don't have a straight answer, unfortunately, like do we do bottom or do we do top? I think it really depends on the state of the business or the objective of the campaign. So if you are very clear what you want to achieve from the campaign, then from there you can decide whether it is, will you focus more top of the funnel for this campaign, or will you focus more on the bottom funnel of this campaign, depending on the campaign objectives. So, and honestly, in today's world, the questions that we always get as a marketeer from the CFO is, how much of my dollar I'm spending on TV is contributing to the gross food value? So, and that's where we start getting into conversations like, oh, we have to go marketing mix modeling, we have to look return of ad spend. It's very theoretical. You're looking at 2 years worth of data. You're doing a regression study. So it's very theoretical. You can deploy it, but how do you add in a filter like COVID, for example, in your data set? So these are very new issues that we're dealing with today. Though principally, theoretically, we can look at top and bottom of the funnel, but like what David has said, you continuously need to learn and relearn. I think it's the agility behind understanding what works today may not work tomorrow, and what has been successful historically may not be successful in the future. So we just have to keep unlearning something and relearning new things, I think, as a marketers today.
I think that's really, really insightful. Jappy and David were nodding kind of like in unison as you were kind of talking through. So I don't know whether either of you just wanted to kind of add to anything that Mei Ling was just saying there that particularly resonated with you.
It's always very comforting to be in sessions like that, where you know that you're not the only one having tough conversations with the finance team or the CFO. That's why at that point I burst out laughing. I was like, oh, thank God I'm not the only one. But I think to add on to what Mei Ling said, right, I don't think that we can ever, regardless of whether you are an offline retailer or an pure play e-commerce business, you cannot say you only do 100% brand or you do 100% performance. The relationship between the two has become even more pronounced in the past, I would say, a few years, because there's just so much data that performance marketers sometimes might not even know what to do with it, right? And sometimes we have this thing called they've optimized the maximum out of all their performance campaigns, and there's just no more push forward from the top of the funnel. And that's where the brand guys comes in and say, haha, it's time to tell a story about the brand. And then we saw before where you launch a big brand campaign, that it's, of course, extremely hard to justify in terms of short-term impact. But then again, you saw that inflow at the mid and the bottom of the funnel, where the performance marketers starts to wonder what just happened. So that relationship between the brand campaign at the top and the performance campaigns at the bottom of the funnel, they start to realize, right? The both teams start to realize, hey, we actually need to work together. And it's regardless of, I would say it's regardless of whether it's an e-commerce player like ourselves or an offline player like Mei Ling's KFC. It's a very common situation across the board.
Yeah, I like similar to these aha moments. I like that oh what happened moments, as long as they're like the spikes, right? For sure. Jappy, I don't know whether I've actually just wanted to kind of refer back to leading you studio, and this probably leads directly from the last question, but how does branding help in driving performance at you studio, right, at Unilever?
Yeah, so for Unilever, we are home with a lot of heritage brands, and perhaps a lot of the brands that we are handling as a team are actually something that you perhaps grew up with, right? So branding is, it's very important because branding is there to induce memorability. You need to be able to remember, oh, that is Lifebuoy, or that is Pond's, that is Dove, right? Essentially, if you are remembered, people will engage with you, and then it will drive performance, right? But then also coming back to the answer I had the previous question, is that how do you create something that's unmissable, that is thumb-stopping, right? So you have to create something thumb-stopping, and then they will remember you, oh, that is Lifebuoy ad. And then, oh, I would love to engage because, perhaps the insight is perfect for me, or this is a brand I grew up with, you remember, and then you will then perhaps, click through, learn more, that will drive performance. So how do you do it? That would be then similar to Mailing's answer. We call it distinctive brand assets here in Unilever, right? So it's important to have your distinctive brand assets to drive the memorability, then internet will drive performance. So say, for example, for Mailing, right? So their distinctive brand asset is then Colonel Sanders inside a bucket, which is up there on her on her screen. For a Unilever example will then be the cracking sound of the Magnum. If you heard see some advertising. And for Cornetto, the bottom of the cone, there's chocolate. So that's something that when we have advertising, really zoom into, the yummy shot. It's getting me hungry already. So that's something that if you have those sounds, those visual elements, or even a voiceover or a jingle, that would really get them to remember. And let's be realistic here. I'm a person who is probably doing something else and hearing YouTube on the background, or watching Netflix or whatever. And then you would hear the music, but then you don't know what the advertising is. So then a lot of the elements such as voiceover, your jingle is very, very important, right? So then essentially this will drive performance because people remember you. So that's very, very important. And that's something that within Unilever, we are making sure that we are putting our distinctive brand assets in our advertising. But I think in this forum, perhaps there will be some startups, new brands. You then have to understand what are the elements that you will build now that you will then bring through consistently, once you start growing, and make sure you don't change it very often.
If I just may add on to Jeffy's point, I think it's true as marketeers, sometimes we probably sometimes focus a lot on the conversion because it's the new buzzword today when it comes to e-commerce and all. But sometimes as marketeers, we forget even to build our sonic identity. That is really part of our DNA. And that's what customers remember us on. And for example, everybody can hum the Intel tune, for example. So, and that is global. So how do we as marketeers actually hold true to a lot of these legacy ways of doing brand marketing, but make sure we retain relevant? I think that's such an important point that we need to remember, I think as marketeers, that we can't lose sight of some of the traditions or some of the heritage to build brands. Yeah. Sorry, I just had to cut in.
No, it's great, and I think it's a really nice way actually to bring it all together, because it is we're talking about a transition of advertising over a number of years, but sort of the core premise of what we're trying to do doesn't really change. It's just a medium, it's just a format. I'm conscious that we're probably getting close to time, but I just thought to end. This is slightly off piece, so bear with me. I've got some quick fire questions or quick fire answers. I'm going to give you two options, and just go with whichever option you feel is right for you. So it's going to be quick fire. Maybe I'm going to go Jappy, Mailing, and David. So okay, quick fire. Here we go. So start with Jappy. TikToks or Reels?
Reels.
Mailing?
TikTok.
TikTok.
Metaverse or reality?
Reality for now, but maybe that will be a different answer in the next few months.
Can it be both?
That's best of both worlds. Absolutely. David?
Sorry, what's a metaverse? I'm just kidding. Reality for me.
Cool. Innovate or iterate?
Innovate, for sure.
Iterate.
Iterate for me.
Okay, and then the question that everyone wants answered, Bali or Phuket?
Bali, 100%.
That's tough. Ali, yeah, I'll go with Jeffy here.
I have to go with Bali. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I think that's a clean sweep. So yeah, I think that's it actually for our kind of questions, but I hopefully we've got a few questions from the panels, the panel, the audience. So just before we get into that, appreciate everybody's time. Thank you very much, Jappy, Mei-Ling, David. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you had a bit of fun as well. And then, yeah, over to Shaina.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Stuart. And to our panelists, it's really interesting at the last part. It's like a talk show. So yeah, so we do have a lot of questions in, but I do want to put this first because this is something that it's actually a good question because it connects the presentation of Stuart and also the insights of the panelists. So there's a question here about how relevant are the trends that you've pointed out in your presentation to the panelist teams here in APAC specifically. So maybe we could focus on, she didn't specify the trend, but maybe we could focus on multi-platform advertising. Like any of the panelists could answer. So how do you think you can adopt multi-platform advertising to your marketing plans and roadmaps? And how do you think will this pan out to each of your brands?
Maybe I can start first. So I think when it comes to cross-platform marketing, the first thing we probably need to understand is there is no one-size-fits-all creative component today. So when we look at the campaign, for example, and obviously we do through the line because we are top funnel all the way to bottom funnel. We do through the line. And the constant debate that I have with my creative agency is when you look at the campaign, you have to ensure that it goes through the line. How does that creative concept manifest from traditional? It can be a digital out of home, all the way to the programmatic advice that you buy. And how do you ensure when you're doing a production, for example, that it's native to the varied platforms? I can't do a 30-second TVC on TikTok. It will just fall flat. Especially the kids, they won't like it. They will just what they call thumb you over, for example. So you need to find a very clear concept that is able to, the creative execution, you are able to build it very native to very specific platform. So, and this in today, I don't think we have, I will have a set say that we have cracked the code. We've not cracked the code because there's so many new platforms today. We're still trying to crack TikTok, to be honest. It's a platform that you just can't run regular ads. Instagram, there's stories, that reels. So how do you capitalize on that? And when you talked, I think David talks about, okay, well, or Jappy talked about the amplifiers. So what is the relevant content that you can use for storytelling? I think David talked to me about storytelling. And how does that resonate into one campaign? So look at the creative concept. Be very sharp about the creative thinking. And the campaign does not necessarily be a cut and paste on every platform. It has to exist and it has to be native to whatever platform it exists on. That will be my view for full funnel marketing. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mei-Ling. We do have a question here about influencer marketing, and I think this is something that we can address to Jappy, I think. So how do you see influencer marketing play a role on your social media advertising plans?
Yeah, so I think influencers have been here for a long time and they're here to stay, especially now with the rise of TikTok. They are a very important part of some of our brands here in Unilever. We really integrate them into the plans that we are building. So say, for example, U Studio would work on a certain campaign where we build, the overall digital strategy, right? And we will perhaps also do a proposal from top to bottom funnel. But then also within within those funnels, we also think, how can we amplify this further outside of our own platforms? Because at the end of the day, perhaps KFC's, HappyFresh and one of our brands' Instagram pages is just so limited. How can we then leverage on our friends, our KOLs, so to speak, our influencers, to leverage on their audiences, and of course make sure that we are talking to the right audiences when we choose them, right? So we see them as an amplification platform, and we don't see them as like a by the way, especially for our personal care brands. Very important that we integrate them into the ecosystem, the proposal, the strategy that U Studio, my team does. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Jappy. And I think this is a question that is applicable to all panelists, but I think we're just going to ask this to David. So, will the cookie-less future somehow affect the spend in social media? Which is, I think, it's a yes. But how do you see the workaround here? Like, what is your strategy in dealing with the more cookie-less future in your social media spend?
It's the same saying as if petrol prices goes up, do you stop driving? You don't, right? But the thing is, you will be more careful about how you drive. You will plan your route even better before you start driving. Likewise, in marketing, it's the less you know about your audience, right? Cookieless world has been the longest debate ever in the past, I would say 3 to 5 years now. And then Apple just come in and say, nope, you guys are not going to know anything about my users now. Do we stop advertising to iOS users? This is a big no-no, right? We need iOS users. How are we going to do it? I would say the navigation around the problem is start thinking about how to get the attention even better using other channels, using other marketing techniques. Like a lot of us also say, right, it might be a way to go back to the good old days of even think about billboards, right, or TV or radio. You can't put a pixel, you can't put a tracking pixel behind a billboard. You can't track who has already seen it. But if it's so engaging and it's so talkable that people take a picture of it and then post it on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and then it starts getting viral online, that it's a new strategy that nobody has actually talked about, offline to online marketing. Right. So a lot of these nuances or a lot of this old school tactic can come back but think about it, right? Back in the 70s, none of us know about our audience, anything about that, because there was no such thing as digital marketing. That was only advertising. Are we going back to those days? No, not so much, but there are some flavors or essence of the good old days that we can borrow again and then bring us back into the game.
I'm just thinking, actually, as you're talking, David, one of the things that, like, this open data, Mei Ling actually spoke about it, but kind of like trends that you can see, public trends that you can see that some of these platforms are kind of showing you. Is that a different data that like now you're potentially using more actively than maybe you were thinking about 3 or 4 years ago? So, I'm just thinking like Twitter trends on Twitter or TikTok trends or on whichever social platform that you're thinking of.
Data is there. Right? Data is never going to disappear. I think what we do with the data is a totally different ballgame. A lot of marketers has been struggling with that. But then again, I also urge a lot of marketers that never forget about this thing called the marketer's guts. A lot of us suck ourselves into Excel spreadsheet, Google spreadsheet, and all that, and then start to analyze and do projections about growth and all. But we forgot that at the end of the day, red is a color of passion or a color for Coca-Cola, and these are things that we forgot, which really goes back to the connection with your consumers at the end of the day, right? That human touch, that marketers' guts still have a part to play in the data world.
Jappy definitely reminded me not to forget that, and now yourself and Mei Ling have also. So there's no excuses for anyone listening to this session now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stuart, and to our panelists once again. Unfortunately, we don't have that much time to accommodate all of the questions. So once again, thank you so much to our panel, such a diverse set of perspectives and insights that you've shared with us today. Any closing thoughts and messages, Stuart?
I think it's just really a chance to say once again, thank you to yourself and to all of the team, and especially obviously the panelists. These sessions kind of really rely on getting great people to share thoughts and share their perspectives and ideas. So really appreciate, Jappy, your time, Mei Ling and David. Have a fantastic rest of the day. Thank you everybody for listening. Hope to see you again sometime soon, in person or virtually. Maybe in Bali.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. Yes, we've learned so much about social advertising today, the key trends, the pain points, and also the best strategies to stay ahead of the competition. So as we end this webinar, we would like to thank Smartly.io, our partner for this event. So thank you, everyone. I am Shaina, and until our next conversation.